I sat at my computer for a long time, trying to figure out why I don't like Frostpunk 2. On the surface, it takes everything Frostpunk did, and it does them bigger and better. It expands on the themes of the first game, and it introduces some cool mechanics that I like. So why aren't I having fun? Frostpunk is one of my favorite games ever. It is a masterpiece of tension, storytelling through gameplay, moral dilemmas, and oh my god, the music. You'll forgive me if I'm not feeling very funny today. I just had my heart ripped out by a game I waited 6 years for. Because I'll tell you now, I did not finish this game. So if you're looking for a full, comprehensive review, I cannot give you that. All I can give you is heartbreak. So this is not a review of Frostpunk 2. This is an autopsy. Greetings gamers, my name is Kamikaze, and I'm back to being scripted and actually cohesive. I did go on a bit longer with that speech, but upon watching it back, I think that really was the perfect spot to leave it. I recorded that a couple days ago, and I've had some time to digest and consolidate my opinions in a way that makes more sense. And I've moved on to the next stage of grief, anger. But we'll get there. I think I've figured it out though. Rewind to the second sentence of my little speech there. On the surface, it takes everything Frostpunk did, and it does them bigger and better. And there, right there, bigger is the problem. Frostpunk was a game that excelled because of your personal connection with your citizens. Every citizen in your city is a living, breathing human being. You can click on any person, see their name, their job, their family members, what they need, if they're sick or healthy. You can zoom way in and be basically on the street with them, watching them go about their daily lives. It makes you feel like you're a part of the city, and you have a tremendous investment in the outcome. Everything you build, every law you pass, every promise you make are all in service of helping your citizens. It's also why the game can be such a gut punch when you have to make all these extreme decisions that you really don't want to make, but have to do for the good of the city as a whole. I really don't want to feed my people sawdust or put them in labor camps, but, you know, sometimes you have to, or the city will go boom. Frostpunk 2 takes Frostpunk and zooms everything out to a bigger scale. You don't build houses, you build districts. It takes 600 workers to crew something instead of 15. Time is measured in weeks and months instead of hours and days. And the whole experience is less personal. You can't zoom in and follow your little people around anymore. They only exist as streaking lights on the roadways. Even these pop-up messages of your citizens only show you like a third of someone's face instead of like a portrait of their whole body and head. And this is the fatal flaw of Frostpunk 2. Your citizens aren't people anymore, they're just another resource to be managed. The game also makes me very angry sometimes, but before I get to the inevitable rant about why I quit the game, let me just quickly mention the things I do like. I absolutely love the laws and the research tree. So new in Frostpunk 2 are political factions. There are 4 of them, and they each have their own goals and motivations. They all want to help the city, but they go about it in different ways. Some embrace adaptation and equality, and others will embrace progress and merit. There are some real problems involving the factions that we'll get to, but in this context, I really like them. You no longer build workshops to research things, you have the factions think about stuff really hard. The research tree consists of various concepts or problems, and each faction will give you their own idea of how to solve it. For example, children. At the start of the game, children are lawless hooligans, roaming the city causing crime, so there's a research node for them. The Frostlanders will present the idea of making children apprentices, whereas the New Londoners suggest mandatory school. Both options give their own benefits and will make the faction you support happy, while also ticking off the one you ignore. Sometimes factions will agree on stuff, and you can make multiple factions happy at once, and sometimes they all propose different stuff. There are a few different categories of things you can research: buildings, passive effects, or laws. And laws are probably my absolute favorite thing about this game. The law book from the first game is gone, and now you have the Council. Yes, New London is a democracy now, and laws have to be voted on. The Council is made of delegates from each of the 4 factions. There are always 100 delegates, and the factions get delegates based on their percentage of the population. So if the Stalwarts make up 19% of the population, then the Stalwarts get 19 delegates, if left unmeddled with. There are some ways you can influence how many seats each faction has through some seriously underhanded tactics. You propose laws, though, or you can let factions propose laws, and this screen will show you the initial stance of all the delegates: the agrees, the disagrees, and the maybes. How likely delegates from each faction are to vote something through depends on their worldview, and I think how much the faction they belong to likes you. I'm not 100% sure about that second part, though. Either way, you can call a vote immediately, or you can take a part in the most central of political institutions, lobbying. You can sway people to vote for or against laws by promising them stuff, either researching what they want, or building stuff, or passing laws for them in the future. But why would you want to persuade them to vote against a law? Aha! Well, remember when I said other factions can propose laws? That's something that you can let them do in exchange for more trust, or perhaps voting with you on another issue, so you can be an absolute bastard. Let them propose a law in order to gain political favor, then go behind their backs and convince everyone else to vote it down. And I love this system. I adore it. I think it's fantastic. Politics are probably my favorite part of the game. I think it's really interesting trying to balance the desires of different factions while also ensuring you yourself don't get voted out. Man, I should have been president. This is my jam. Anyway, what else do I like? Colonies are cool. You no longer have just one city to manage, you can have several. You need to send colonists to other settlements to work there, manage the resources coming and going, and make sure that they don't freeze to death, obviously. Once the colonies get set up and running, it's pretty easy to forget about them, but it is fun getting them set up, and this is a big part of making the game feel, well, bigger. Finally, the music is incredible, but it sort of overdoes it a bit. It's like they listened to how much everyone loved The City Must Survive from the first game, and they were like, we need way more of that. So while every track in isolation is good, sometimes I'll be sitting in pause mode trying to plan out my industrial districts for maximum heat coverage, and this huge dramatic orchestral number will be booming in my ears, and it can feel a bit odd. But now we need to talk about objectives. This game has way more of a story than the first game. The first game is basically find Winterhome, calm down the Londoners, survive. Boom. It's not a lot, but it's effective. This game amps that up a lot, to both positive and negative effects. The story can be interesting, but I don't love how hand-holdy it can be. It basically gives you exact step-by-step instructions for everything. Build this district. Now research this building. Now build that building. Now get more coal. Now explore this specific spot. The first game just gave broad objectives like contact Winterhome, and then sort of let you figure it out from there. And this game loves making you read, by the way. The mechanics of the first game are pretty simple. The icons are obvious, and the tooltips plentiful, and to the point. This game, on the other hand, is a disaster at telling you what's going on. There are so many systems and resources, oh my god. There is a prologue which teaches you some stuff, albeit rather poorly, and then once you beat it, it changes the name of a bunch of stuff. Just to fuck with you, I guess. I had to restart chapter 1 15 minutes in my first time because I didn't realize heat stamps were the main currency, so I blew them all on frost breaking stuff. Am I an idiot? Yes. But it certainly doesn't help that they were called scraps in the tutorial. However, most of the info you need is in the help menu. I hate help menus. I never read these in any game because reading is for nerds. But I found myself having to constantly pull this up because something would happen, a new icon would show up on my screen, and I would be like, what does that mean? I don't know. The game doesn't tell you. And there are only tooltips like 50% of the time. I lost in Frostpunk 1 several times because the game is hard. But I never lost because the game was withholding information from me. I couldn't keep up with the research, or I couldn't meet food demands, or I ran out of coal, or whatever. I never lost in Frostpunk 2, but I almost did a couple times, because some new system the game didn't tell me about was just screwing me over. Also, this game doesn't let you build roads anymore. This is a nitpick, but building roads in the first game is very satisfying. They're so round and they click together nicely. It's like those TikToks of people cutting soap. Now they just build automatically, and that makes me a very grumpy boy. And now, story time. Spoiler alert for the first 3 chapters of the game, by the way. Why did I quit Frostpunk 2 halfway through? Let me tell you. The end of chapter 2 is surviving a whiteout. A big ol' snowstorm, and it gets really, really cold. After the storm passes, chapter 3 begins by having a meeting with your peeps, and they determine that more whiteouts may be on the way. The best thing we can do is supercharge the generator with steam cores. Sorry, they're just called cores now, I guess. But here's the plan. We should go back to the ruins of Winterhome and loot the exploded generator. Woo! Tasteful callback. The game tells me that Winterhome is very dangerous though, and I should stock up on supplies. Okay, sure, sounds reasonable. So I send my scouts to start exploring in that direction, while I build a bunch of new industrial districts and crank my oil production to the max. Then the game crashed. I relaunched it, and it hadn't autosaved in the 15 minutes since I started chapter 3. That's not why I quit, it was just annoying and I wanted to complain about it. And this game is horribly optimized. I'm not going to use any fancy analogies here, it runs like shit. But, fine, whatever. I built all the stuff again. And now, with my supplies building up, my scouts begin to explore the path to Winterhome. In the meantime, I obviously didn't want to do nothing, so I built some more stuff, and then I passed a law. Okay, pause. If I zoom in here real small, see this little icon above the pilgrims? That is the fervor meter. I will now tell you about fervor, since the game sure doesn't. Honestly, I have no idea how factions gain fervor points, but the more points they have, the more violent, radical, and likely to protest they will be. I had a point on the pilgrims for like ages, and I had no idea how. But when I passed this new law, they were like, we ball. They gained a second fervor point and immediately started a riot. Protests will shut down a district of your city. That's annoying. But it gets worse. The longer the protest goes on, it spreads and shuts down more districts. The more fervor and the bigger the faction protesting, the faster it'll shut down your city. I didn't know this because the game obviously doesn't tell you any of that. So I just kind of ignored it at first because I was like, it's just a housing district. It'll be fine. I'll deal with them in a bit. And then it started to spread and I kind of panicked. I went to negotiate with them, and you have a couple options to break up the protest. First option is to send in the guards to violently beat them back into submission. Oh, I so would have loved to have done this, but I didn't have that law passed, and I didn't have the votes to get it passed, so that was off the table. Option 2 was to ignore them. Tried it, also off the table. Option 3 was to, repeal half the laws I had passed and tear down a bunch of watchtowers. Ouch. And option 4 was to research 2 things that they wanted. So it was a fairly easy choice. I immediately started researching the first thing, and then I sat back on high speed until it was done. Cool, next one. Wait a second. Why is my time limit almost done? I have to research 2 things. The game did not give me enough time to research all the things that they demanded. First of all, that's bullshit. It doesn't tell me on the negotiation screen how long these things take to research or how long I have to do it. So I failed, because of course I did. The game didn't give me a chance to succeed. Obviously, this led to the pilgrims being even more upset with me. I tried to raise my reputation by bribing them with money and delegate seats, but that wasn't enough. So I had to do negotiation 1, which was to repeal 3 laws and destroy some buildings. So I did, because I had no other choice. By this point, well over half my city was shut down, and we had run out of food, so everyone was starving to death. Which made everyone even angrier with me, of course. And I was rather upset by this point. This whole saga started because the game never told me about the fervor bar, and then it got worse because it lied to me about my options. Whatever. It was done. Now I had to rebuild a bunch of stuff, because dear God, it was not a peaceful protest, and I was super in the hole for every resource type. And at this point, I was just like, whatever, and I sent my scouts to Winterhome anyway, because it had been like an hour IRL and several months in-game. But watching my scouts march on to Winterhome, I started to feel a little bit better. My buildings were finishing up, so I had some resources coming in. The last of the protests finally dissipated, and I was gonna get to see Winterhome again. The fall of Winterhome was really cool, so it'll be neat to see it again, or what's left of it. Or that's what I would have done if the game hadn't immediately crashed again. I relaunched, and this time, the game had autosaved. An hour ago. Right after the first protest started. And no. No, I will not do that again. Why should I force myself to play through all of that just to get back to my original state of being bored and disappointed? So I didn't. I stopped playing the game. It clearly doesn't respect my time, so I'm not giving it any more. Is this a fair review of Frostpunk 2? Probably not. That's why I clearly stated in the title that this is not a review. This is my first impression. Will I finish the game someday? Probably, once there have been some patches and I've cooled down a bit. But not for a while. In conclusion though, fuck you Frostpunk 2. I'm gonna go take a cold shower now. Goodbye.